There is some good news for migrant families that arrive at our southern border. They can no longer be separated while they're processed. This comes after a federal judge approved a settlement between the Justice Department and families represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, ending a legal challenge filed nearly 7 years ago. Oftentimes, when families are separated, the parents are deported with their kids unaccounted for. The ban will be in place for 8 years. Joining us now to explain how this is impacting people on both sides of the border is Francisco Lara Valencia. He's an ASU professor with the School of Transborder Studies. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So we know it is the 6th day of the border crossing closure at the Lukeville port of entry. How significant is this type of closure?
It's very significant. Each border port of entry supports a transborder economic and social ecosystem. And the interruption of people moving back and forth means that social and economic life is affected on both sides of the border. The Lukeville border port of entry in particular is unique in the Arizona context because it's essentially crossed by tourists and families of Phoenix and Tucson that own beach property or second homes in Rocky Point. Most travelers that crossed through Lukeville in the last 12 months were passengers, 93% of them, and most travel in March, the summer months, and November, which clearly indicates that Rocky Point is a popular touristic destination for many in Arizona. Every year, 1 million people cross the border to Lukeville, so the impact of the closure is significant for Arizona tourists and families. Of course, it's also very significant for businesses and families in Sonora that depend on the visitors.
Mm-hmm. So you just touched on the businesses in Rocky Point who I've been in touch with a couple people down there, and they say it's just been virtually dead there this week. They're finding that people aren't wanting to make this longer drive with this port of entry closed. I know you've done a lot of research and sort of the connections between these cross-border communities, including Nogales. You just touched on it, but can you kind of expand on how important these relationships are across the border?
Of course. The economic and social connections between Sonora and Arizona are quite old and grow stronger with time. You can describe the existing ties between the two states using the term interdependence. That's mean that the effect of border closure are significant on both sides of the border, but especially for businesses and workers of places like Rocky Point, which depend tremendously on tourism. In Rocky Point alone, 52% of the jobs depend on restaurants, hotels, and other hospitality industries. The closure will also have a tremendous effects on the economy of places like White and Agua in Arizona, which depend also substantially on travelers and visitors to Rocky Point. It will also affect, as you were mentioning, people who have rental property in Rocky Point, because now people will need to travel to remote places like San Luis or Nogales if they want to visit Rocky Point. So there's going to be a ripple effect on other border localities that are already struggling to handle border crossing activity.
And we know the Tucson sector is seeing a record number of migrants that are showing up the border to get refugee status or come to the U.S. We know they come from all different parts of the world. What are some of the big factors that are driving people? What's happening in other countries to drive them here?
The wave of people arriving at the border and seeking entry into the U.S. are fleeing poverty, violence, and environmental calamities. They're leaving their towns and families forced by dire circumstances back in their home countries in South America, Central America, Africa, and even China. They also move by the belief that reaching the U.S. is a guarantee of a life free of violence and full of opportunity for them and their families. So fear and hope are the reasons they're willing to risk everything, even their lives, to reach the U.S.-Mexico border. Unfortunately, they're also lured by organized criminal groups that profit from their desperation.
Yeah. Professor, thank you so much. We know the governor is going to be visiting Lukeville today, so that's something we'll keep a close eye on and see what, if anything, changes there in the next few days. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
To stay up to date with all of our border coverage, you can always download the free Arizona's Family News app. You can get updates on this story and more sent straight to your phone throughout the day.